First of all, thanks to all of you that submitted your questions for the NFL Draft Q&A this week. In fact, there were so many of the questions that we are going to break it up into two parts. I know NFL Draft Nerdgasm in 3, 2, 1. Anyways, thanks. So if your question isn't answered in part 1 of this video, there's a part 2 coming up a little bit later that will probably have it. So just be patient and stay tuned. But go ahead and sit through all this one and then click on that one. Lorenz Grani is going to kick us off by asking, do you think Johnny Football deserves a second chance? In theory, yes, I'm okay with people getting a second chance. So as long as Colin Kaepernick gets a second chance, who's a better player, who's done more, and deserves it, because Johnny Football did shit off the field to negatively impact himself. Colin Kaepernick is getting blackballed because he dared to speak out about inequality in this country and just happened to sit there and take a knee during the national anthem, at which time the NFL is getting paid to put on these propaganda ceremonies by the government. And that's exactly what happens. They don't call it anything else other than that. The only reason the NFL gives a crap about it and is upset about it is because there's money involved. Period. All this other crap is garbage. And as far as the owners and the general managers and everybody else that doesn't like it, is it really that big of a deal? I mean, is it really that big of a deal? Is it really that big of a deal? If Johnny Football gets a second chance, then Colin Kaepernick sure as hell better get a second chance. To me, that's only fair. Matthew Hargrove, because of the Jets, any thoughts that they traded up for a defensive player at number 3? God, I would love that. That would be magnificent. That would be glorious. But no, not this time. You make a move up that big, even if you're the Jets, you're doing it for a quarterback. Now, because they're the Jets, you can make the argument that they'll do it for the wrong quarterback, but you're doing it for a quarterback nonetheless. Joseph Kenny, is the Browns' interest in Sam Darnold a smokescreen to get the Giants to move up to number 1? Perhaps. There's a chance that all of the talk about Darnold and the Browns is to try and force the Giants' hands, with the word being out there that the Giants are only interested in Darnold in terms of the quarterback. So why not, if you're the Browns, give yourself all leverage? That said, let's say the Browns are really giggly tits over Josh Allen. If Josh Allen is your guy, then you take him number 1. You don't sit there and get cutesy fuck and try to sit there and trade down to number 2 just for a couple of extra damn picks, regardless of what the picks are. You need to make a statement after an 0-16 season. You take that quarterback number 1, whoever that might be. If you believe in Josh Allen that much, then you don't fiddle fuck around. You take Josh Allen number 1 and let everything else play out as it may. If Sam Darnold is your guy, then you come out today and say Sam Darnold is your guy, and you move the hell on and let the rest of the draft play out where it may. That's my thought. Haidar Agil. Will there still be legit offensive line talent available in the 3rd round? I fully believe so, absolutely. Especially on the interior of the line, but there might be a few offensive tackles that kind of slip through the cracks. Guys like Desmond Harrison with some off-the-field issues, Brandon Parker from NCAA, Jamarco Jones. There are going to be some other guys, I think, on the interior of the line and also at the tackle position that I look at and say they could be available round 3, day 3, and they could play in the NFL. And it happens like that all the time. Zaki Reeson. Is it possible that no wide receiver will be taken in round 1? I find that unlikely that none will be. There might only be 2 of them taken in round 1, but to say no wide receiver, this isn't a great class, but I don't think the class is that bad. So my over-under right now would be 2. I think 2. I think Sutton and Ridley are probably the 2 that are most likely locked into round 1. After that, it's a crapshoot. But none of them, that seems unreasonable to me. Stephen Hilton. How does the 2008 running back class compare to the 2017 running back class? It compares. I think the talent at the top of the 2017 class was a little bit better. I think the overall depth was just a tad better. But this is still a really good running back class this year. Really good running back class this year. I just happen to think that last year's class was a little bit better. I really do. For Christ's sakes, in round 3, you saw guys go like Alvin Kamara and Kareem Hunt. You'll be hard-pressed to see guys like that going round 3 of this draft that make that type of impact as rookies. But still, pretty good class this year. Josh Berg, I have Ridley outside of my top 3 to 4 wide receivers. Is this a fair assessment? Honestly, that depends. It depends on who you have rated ahead of him and why. It depends on why you think Calvin Ridley isn't one of your top 3 or 4 wide receivers, what your justification is, what your grading methodology is, what you're seeing that puts him a little lower on your list. In theory, it's a fair assessment as long as you can back up what you're saying or what you believe based off of something that makes sense. You get what I'm saying? So, do I think it's outside of the realm of possibility that even teams might have Ridley as like the 3rd, 4th, or 5th wide receiver in this class? No, because some teams might not want a 24-year-old first-round pick. They might have other concerns. Where does he play? Is he really going to be an outside guy? Is he more suited to be a slot guy in the NFL, or is he a number 2 wide receiver, and do you invest a first-round pick in him? So there could be teams that mirror your thought process. I'm just curious what your thought process is. So you can reply in the comments, and then that'll give me a better idea to say whether or not it's a fair assessment. Jeff's ego. That's right, my ego is so big it has its own Twitter handle. What quarterback should the Bills take? Josh Allen. They need a big, strong-arm dude that can really whip it, and he's the guy that can do the most of that. You could sit there and talk about the Josh Rosens of the world, but to me, Josh Allen in Buffalo seems like a match made in whatever the hell you want to call it. If you're the Bills and you're making that big risk to, in theory, have gone up from 21 to 12, then to potentially make another move all the way up to number 2, then you best damn sure get the guy with the most upside for you. And it's got to be Allen. To me, it's got to be Allen. That's what I say. Brino Jorge. A day 2 or 3 edge rusher, pass rusher, who's a very underrated prospect. Based off of guys I've seen so far, Kamoko Toure from Rutgers is one guy that stands out to me. Like, I thought he was going to be a future like 1st or 2nd round pick a couple of years ago, and then he just kind of like disappeared. But he's a guy I think similar to a Yannick Ngakoue from Maryland that can fly under the radar but have some immediate impact as an edge rusher. That's just one guy I could think of right now. Mike Schmidt. If the Bills and Cardinals don't get a quarterback, should they trade for Nick Foles? They should cry. They should absolutely cry themselves to sleep at night for their stupidity. They're going to get quarterbacks, both of them in this draft. Where it comes from remains to be determined. But they're both, one way or another, going to get a quarterback in this draft. Should they trade for Nick Foles, though? No. I mean, you're going to go off of a small sample size of a couple of games where he happened to get hot and believe that that's automatically going to carry over to the next season? How much are you willing to invest in that risk? Because that's a big risk. Courtney Sentamore. Should the Bears still draft another wide receiver, or are they good at that position now? I know they've signed Allen Robinson. They've signed Taylor Gabriel. You're hoping for the return to health of Cameron Meredith and Kevin White, but especially Kevin White's case, that's a pretty big hope. They need to draft another wide receiver, if not 2. Especially since Kendall Wright has left via free agency. You for sure need to draft 1 and probably 2. They need as much position, as much depth at that position as they could possibly get. Don't automatically assume that you're good at the damn position. Get better at that position. Kane Gress. Which safeties could be available for the Eagles at 32? I think every one of them that's not named Derwin James and Minka Fitzpatrick. So Justin Reed, Jesse Bates, other safeties, they'll all probably be available at pick 32, honestly, the way I see it at this point. But again, still almost a month till the draft. Things can change. Tyrone asks, what were your impressions on Von Miller coming out of 2011 since you said that you missed on him really big? I did. And I'll be honest with you, whatever I said was probably so idiotic that I really can't remember, but I think it was something to the effect of I just didn't see why a 240-pound edge rusher was such a big deal and was going to go number 2. I just massively missed on that one. And I think part of it, to be fair, was I didn't watch Von Miller enough. I didn't watch him enough in depth to really formulate an educated opinion on him, if I'm being honest. And that's my bad. That's my ass, because I massively missed on him. Very much so. I also think, to be fair, this was coming off of the heels of Aaron Curry a couple of years before going to Seattle at pick 4, And some of the comparisons with Aaron Curry, I'm thinking, okay, Von Miller, if Curry busted, why wouldn't Von Miller bust? So there are reasons. They just didn't end up being very good ones. Funaki is God. SmackDown #1 announcer. How should the Bears approach this draft? Offense or a more balanced approach? Outside of the quarterback position, best player available. If pick 8, that takes you to Quentin Nelson, then you draft Quentin Nelson. If that takes you to the defensive side of the ball and you draft somebody like Denzel Ward, Tremaine Edmonds, Harold Landry, Derwin James, whoever the case might be, then that's what you do. You take the best player available, regardless of position that's not quarterback, throughout the draft. There's a very good chance that the Bears might end up double dipping on the defensive side of the ball with the first 2 picks, especially with the amount of money they invested in free agency on the offensive side of the ball. But it is best player available. Obviously, number 8, if Quentin Nelson is there, and that's an if, that's a possibility. If he's there, Quentin Nelson is the pick. And you don't think about it. You don't blink about it. It's that simple. Josh Grantham. Who is more comparable to Brian Urlacher? Tremaine Edmonds or Leighton Vander Esch? Leighton Vander Esch in terms of pigment. Tremaine Edmonds in terms of athleticism, range, and those type of things. There you go. I hope that helps. Matt Holtman. If Quentin Nelson is gone, do the Bears take Landry, Edmonds, or Davenport? It's funny now all of a sudden that Landry is entering the conversation at pick 8, but I really feel like if Landry is there and Nelson's not, that Landry might be the pick even over a guy like a Denzel Ward. It's just a feeling that I get. And then let's be honest here, when I've talked about the past few years with the mock drafts for the Bears, in 2014, I totally nailed Kyle Fuller. 2015, I totally nailed Kevin White. 2016, I nailed Leonard Floyd. I just had them doing it at 11 instead of pick 9. 2017, different story, but I had them taking Solomon Thomas, if I recall correctly, and Solomon Thomas still technically ended up going 3rd anyways. So I've been in the ballpark the past few years for the Bears. Yeah, there's something like inside of me that says that they would be intrigued by the physical upside of a Tremaine Edmonds, but they'd want somebody that could make a more immediate impact as an edge rusher now to complement Leonard Floyd outside, and that is Harold Landry. So Bears fans better buckle up for the possibility that pick 8 comes down to Quentin Nelson if he's there, and if he's not, it's Harold Landry. Ian, which pass rusher should the Patriots take at 31? I don't know, doesn't Sam Hubbard seem like their type of dude? Doesn't he seem like their type of guy? He does, kind of, doesn't he? The thing that's interesting to me with the Patriots is they don't really care about these draft picks that much, and that's fine because they're in the win-now mode. But what they do is they try to sit there every year and they try to accumulate all these additional picks. At some point in time, I always ask for the Patriots standpoint, why don't you make one massive move up the draft board? Take the picks that you've accumulated and go from the 30s into the teens or into the top 10. You could do it, and you have enough to give up that a team would be interested in doing it. I'm surprised that they don't do that. But for me, I would think somebody like a Sam Hubbard just fits the mold. And it's not just because he's white. No, that's not true. That is only one part of a bigger equation. Punk-ass Goku. Where does Harold Landry land? Is pick 9 too early for him? The way things shake out, potentially, pick 9 could be too late for him, as I've already referenced. I think his range is somewhere between 8 to 14. There's a chance, especially if Quentin Nelson's gone, that he's the guy for Chicago at 8. If the Raiders are looking for an edge rusher at 10, then he could be the guy. As far as I'm assuming you're a Niners fan, you're asking for the Niners at 9. Seems weird that they would invest yet another pick in the front 7, but who knows? Pick 12, the Giants, especially if they're thinking about running a lot of 3-4 looks. Landry makes sense for them. 13, you could make an argument for the Redskins. Pick 14, he probably doesn't get past the Green Bay Packers. So I feel like Harold Landry's in a good place right now, minus any new revelations or any other movements up the board significantly by other prospects. That's going to be Landry is somewhere between 8 and 14. It's just a matter of where he ends up. So that was it for part 1 of this NFL Draft Q&A. Thanks to who you submitted your questions. Easy for me to say. Part 2 will be coming up soon, so stay tuned for that one.